My fiancé's parents handed her a check to end our engagement, an actual check, with a number on it. She cashed it. She handed me back my ring in a coffee shop on a Wednesday afternoon while her mother waited in the car outside. I kept the breakup note. It was written on monogrammed stationery. I put it in a drawer and I tried very hard to forget it existed. Years later, I purchased the luxury resort that her family had spent 3 decades talking about visiting one day. The membership denial letter I mailed them was, without question, the most satisfying correspondence I have ever sent. This is that story. My name is Thomas. I'm 38 now. When all of this started, I was 26. I grew up comfortably but not richly. Middle-class family, good values, not much extra. I worked my way through university and graduated with a degree in hospitality management, which my future ex-fiancé's family found amusing. Hospitality. As in running hotels, as in a service industry, as in not the kind of profession that impressed people who measured worth by the square footage of your office. Her family, I'll call them the Holloways, were old money adjacent, not genuinely wealthy but deeply invested in the appearance of it. Country clubs, charity galas, strong opinions about which kind of people their daughter should associate with. I was not the right kind of people. Her father told me this relatively early in our relationship. Not in those words, but in the ones people use when they want to say something rude and maintain plausible deniability. He said things like, "Thomas, your industry is so service-oriented. Have you thought about pivoting to something with more upward mobility?" I smiled and said I loved what I did. He stopped smiling back. And I proposed to his daughter, after 2 years of a relationship that was, from my perspective, genuinely wonderful. He and her mother called her separately and told her she was making a mistake. 6 weeks later, she was in that coffee shop, sliding my ring across the table. The note was the thing that got me. Not the breakup itself. I mean, the breakup was devastating, but it was something I could intellectually process as a thing that people do. The note was the thing. It was written on her mother's monogrammed stationery, ivory, with the family initials in navy blue, and it said in her mother's handwriting, but signed by my ex, that the family had determined that our relationship was not well suited for the long term, and that they hoped I would find someone better aligned with my circumstances. Circumstances. They called my life my circumstances. I folded the note. I put it in my jacket pocket. I walked out of the coffee shop and I sat in my car for a long time. Then I drove to my apartment, put the note in a drawer, and did something I hadn't done in a while. I pulled out a notebook and I wrote down in detail exactly where I wanted to be in 10 years. That notebook still sits on my desk. I looked at it recently. I had exceeded almost every goal I had written that night. The one thing I hadn't put on the list was the hotel. That came later. I threw myself into my career with a focus that I think surprised even me. I was already working as a senior manager at an independent hotel group. Within 18 months of the breakup, I had been promoted to general manager of one of their flagship properties. I was good at it. Genuinely good. I understood not just the operational side, but the guest experience, the culture, the way a truly great hospitality property makes you feel like you belong there. I began putting away capital aggressively. I also began studying investment structures, REITs, private equity, and hospitality acquisition models. At 31, I partnered with 2 investors to acquire a struggling boutique hotel in a coastal city. We renovated it, repositioned it, and within 3 years it was one of the top-rated independent properties in its region. We sold it. The return was significant. I did it again and again. At 36, I owned or co-owned 6 properties. My portfolio was substantial. My name in the industry carried weight. And then I heard that the Holloway family's dream resort, a specific well-known luxury property they had talked about visiting for years, the one they referenced at every social occasion as the ultimate symbol of arrival, was coming to market. The owners were retiring. There was a private sale process. I made a call. The acquisition took 4 months to close. It was the largest single transaction I had ever been involved in. I had a small consortium of investors and my own capital alongside it. When the deal closed, I stood in the lobby of the property, this beautiful historic building that the Holloway family had dreamed about for 30 years, and I thought about that coffee shop, about monogrammed stationery, about circumstances. I thought about it for maybe 30 seconds, and then I got to work because I had a hotel to run. Property was excellent but had some operational inefficiencies and a membership model for its private club that needed restructuring. I spent the first 6 months on that work. About 8 months after the acquisition, I became aware, through a mutual contact, purely by coincidence, that the Holloway family had applied for membership to the resort's private club. They had been on a waitlist apparently under the previous ownership. They had finally applied in full. The Membership Review Committee sent me the application as a matter of process. My name was not on any of the public-facing ownership documentation. I operated through a holding company. I reviewed the application. I declined it. I wrote the letter myself. It was formal, professional, and cited capacity constraints in the current membership cohort, which was true. Everything in the letter was true. I mailed it on a Thursday. I thought about it for approximately 1 afternoon. Then I moved on. I found out much later that my ex had run into someone who knew me and had mentioned my name in the context of the property. She had put it together. She sent me a message, the first I had received from her in many years. It said simply, "I heard about the hotel. Congratulations, I mean that." I read it. I sat with it for a while, and then I replied, "Thank you, I hope you're well." And that was that. I have thought from time to time about whether the letter was petty, whether I should have just let the application go through and risen above it. But here's the honest answer. I don't think I did it out of pettiness. I did it because there was something complete and right about it. They had decided I wasn't worth their daughter based on what they thought I would become. And the letter was simply the closing of that particular loop. No scene, no confrontation, just a form letter on hotel stationery. On the property they'd always dreamed about, owned by the man they'd paid to go away. Here's the thing about people who measure you by what you have instead of who you are. They will always be disappointed eventually. Either they decide you don't have enough and discard you, or they find out you have more than they expected and then they want back in. Neither of those outcomes has anything to do with you. It's about them. Their insecurity. Their need to rank everything and everyone in a hierarchy that makes them feel safe. The best response to being dismissed by people like that is not anger. It's not a confrontation. It's growth. Quiet, relentless, private growth. Until the day when the comparison is simply no longer possible. And then, if you're lucky, you get to write a very polite letter on very nice stationery. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to Digital Confessions. Share this with someone who has been underestimated. Drop a comment and tell me, has anyone ever dismissed you based on where you were going instead of where you ended up? How did it turn out? Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.